So I have with me here another Ryzen 6000 series. It's the Ryzen 7 6800H, 45 watt part, 8 cores, 16 threads, and this model here is from Beelink. It's called their SER6 Pro. Windows 11 Pro is the operating system. It does come with pre-installed 32 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM running at 4.8 gigahertz, 512 gigabyte SSD that is PCIe 4.0, Wi-Fi 6, it's not Wi-Fi 6E unfortunately, and 2.5 gigabit LAN. This model, even though it's really small as you can see, fits in the palm of my hand, packs a lot of power, and 680M graphics, which has the 12 executional units, and it clocks up to 2.2 gigahertz, which, what does that translate into, this jargon? Well, it means the gaming performance for integrated graphics on this one is a big step up from the previous generation Vega graphics, for example. It even has this model room for a 2.5-inch drive, which I'll cover and show you the internals and how to upgrade the SER6 Pro from Beelink. Inside the box you will find our power cable, EU1 for me of course, a short HDMI cable. If you're going to be using the VESA mount bracket, then that's the one you'd use. A standard size HDMI cable, the VESA mounting bracket screws, and then some screws for a SATA 3 2.5-inch drive. We have our user manual in various different languages. They do include this, a top dust cover, which is removable in red if you wanted to use that one, other than the standard black or gray one. And then our Huntkey power supply. Now this is a brand I have seen a lot of before. They are well known for their power supplies, and it is 120 watts the output maximum of this power supply. The mini PC is a very small size indeed. It's like those Intel Nooks, very similar to those. And this top here has fabric on it, so this is where the dust will be filtered out because the intake fan's just below this. Now, it's actually a blue color here. Sorry, I said it was black or gray. No, it's a dark blue, and you remove that and you can swap it out with the red one if you wanted to do so. So here at the front, you'll see we do have a set of ports here. We've got the stickers there. 6000 series, because this has the Ryzen 7 and it is the 6800H, and we do have the Radeon 680M graphics, which is quite powerful with this. It's 12 cores and it clocks at 2.2 gigahertz, and I'll show you gameplay later on. So two USB 3 ports here, not 3.2 Gen 2s, but just USB 3. This is our USB 4 port, so that's full spec. Power delivery, it supports it up to 100 watts, and we do have, of course, video out. That's 8K up to 30. You can run 4K 120 Hz from that. 3.5mm headphone jack with mic support, our power button, clear CMOS there. If you happen to mess up any of the settings and it won't boot, then just use a paper clip and push that in to reset it there. And at the back, this is where the hot air is expelled. You can see that right there. Now we've got 2.5 gigabit LAN here, really good. USB 2 port, another USB 3 port, which is a little disappointing. I wish they were 3.2, or actually all of them should be USB 4s. That would be even better. And we've got two HDMI ports that are HDMI 2.0A, so 4K 60. They are not HDMI 2.1, unfortunately, here. And then a DC in to power it all. Then the left and right side of it, we have this, a metal mesh there, which is an intake vent. Along the back, we have two rubber feet, 4 screws. If you remove those and then pull on that, you can lift off the bottom here, gain access to the internals, which I will show you shortly. And it's very kind of them to actually put this on the back. Quick setting description. So delete to get into the BIOS. F7 for our boot order. A lot of brands don't even bother with that, and I just tend to kind of mash the keys to find the correct one to get into the BIOS or boot order. So here there are two mounting holes there for our mounting bracket. VESA mounting this if you wanted to mount it on the back of a monitor. Let's take a look at those internals now. So this is new. They've got this SSD cooler, a little fan here too as well to keep this area a bit cooler. And your 2.5-inch SSDs or spindle hard drives you slot in right here. That's our SATA 3 connector, of course. Removing that cooler was a little bit of extra work. There's quite a few screws you need to remove. And the SATA connector, SATA 3 here, is just to one side. There's a ribbon cable, so be careful that you don't damage that. And this plugs in the fan, that little fan at the top, onto the motherboard directly there. Once you've got that off, you can see our 2 RAM slots there. So we do have DDR5 from Crucial. There are 2 sticks of them, so 2 sticks of 16 gigabytes, sorry, there's giving me 32 in total. And of course, that is DDR5, 4800 megahertz. Here we have our Kingston PCIe 4.0 SSD. Just lift that out, and you'll see underneath we then have our Wi-Fi card, which is the Intel AX200. This has a Bluetooth 5.2 with it. So you can upgrade that, you can upgrade the RAM, you can swap out that SSD and add a 2.5-inch drive. Not bad at all. And here is our BIOS battery if you're wondering what that yellow thing is. Starting out with our BIOS, so I thought I would show you this, that it's quite locked down to us, unfortunately. So we have advanced menu here where you can, auto power on, this is good. So you can set that to on. If you're going to run it as a server or on a switch, whatever, you would want that to be on. There are really no other settings in here that we can tweak because CPU configuration, you'd want to leave all of that enabled. Memory, you wouldn't want to touch that. That's the maximum speed for the DDR5 RAM. And NVMe configuration, well, there's nothing we can change there. So hopefully under chipset, right? Can we change options here? Not really. Graphics configuration doesn't show anything. Northbridge, there's nothing in there we can change. So it's just basically the boot order and that power on, auto power on option. So that's really disappointing with the BIOS that it's locked down to us. Now the speed of Windows, pretty obvious. This is a 4.7 gigahertz maximum turbo, 8-core 16-thread APU from AMD is super fast. So everything I do in Windows just loads up really quick. Multitasking is great. There's no slowdown with the menu. You get the idea. There's no need for me to go over general Windows 11 Pro performance here. So yes, it does ship with Windows 11 Pro, as you can see there. And I do need to run some updates. Of course, that's normal. You get all your Windows updates coming through as soon as you connect up. But I have it disabled at the moment, so it's not going to affect the performance of anything I've been running. So the full amount of RAM isn't available to us because there is a bit dedicated to the 680M graphics. That is normal. It scales up and down there too as well. So the 32 gigabytes DDR5 in dual channel, 4800 megahertz. So it is very quick. Looking in the device manager here, you'll see for our network connection, so we have that Wi-Fi 6 adapter I showed you. Now you can upgrade this. If you want Wi-Fi 6E, you can swap it out. You could put in the AX201, and that will give you Wi-Fi 6E if you need it a little bit faster, if you've got one of those faster routers. And here you'll see that the chipset here listed, of course, 16 times because of the 16 threads. So it's super potent, as you'll see from these benchmarks that I have run. Now, these benchmarks you can run on your own hardware at the moment, so you can see just how much faster it's going to be. This is Geekbench 5, and very good single-core score. Now, that single-core score won't beat the new 12th gen Intels that we have, and of course now the 13th gen is coming out with mobile chips as well. Eventually we'll see them in mini PCs, but still not bad at all. No one's really going to be complaining about that, but I just did want to point out that yes, the Intels can get around 1800 points there. Multi-core score, very good, but it's no Ryzen 9 6900HX. It's a little slower than that, but that's to be expected because it's this is a part that's inferior to that particular model there. And I, of course, have run Cinebench R23 here, as I do in all my mini PC benchmarks that I cover with the reviews, and you can see again that very good performance here. So that does run for 10 minutes single core test, and then another 10 minutes multi-core test that I did run there too. The thermals, I'll just show you those now because it is interesting to point out that yes, it's getting hot, but it hits 90 degrees and it doesn't trigger thermal throttling. You have a look here, and it doesn't say that yes for thermal throttling, and that's good. We don't want to see that. So even though it's getting hot, it's not thermal throttling itself. So that is good there. Now it pulls about 45 watts maximum I have seen from the wall. It's about just over almost 70 watts that it does pull. I do have an external hard drive connected up to as well, by the way, with the USB 4 Type-C port there. And it's running at full maximum speeds too as well. So that's all good. Everything checks out. What about the fan noise? So I will do a quick sample of the fan noise now. It's at maximum load. This is with Cinebench R23, just stressing it out, all of those 8 cores.
Well, this does support PCIe 4.0, and apparently it's a Kingston drive that is PCIe 4.0. The speeds certainly don't look like it, apart from the read is maybe slightly over the cap that we used to have with PCIe 3. So you could improve upon these speeds. It's not a fast drive at all. If you wanted the 7,000 megabytes per second reads and writes sequentials, then get yourself something like a Samsung 980 Pro, and then you get those blazing fast speeds. But it's still quick, and it's not, I think most people will still be happy with these kind of speeds here. It's not a big issue. It's just that I did and do wish that it actually shipped with a PCIe 4.0 drive that was a lot faster than this. And let's jump now over into media playback, and I will use Chrome for this because I find that performance of Chrome for streaming is actually the worst. So jump into YouTube, in fact YouTube 4K 60 demo. We'll see how it performs. Now this is the one I always do test out. So I've got it, actually it's muted already, and I want to make sure that that is 4K 60. Turn that on to full screen and enable our stats here. Now it's dropped, okay, 8 frames already. That was probably when it just resized. That's kind of normal for that to happen. And now look at that, solid performance. No drop frames. In fact, I found the AX200 card on this to be excellent. I'm getting a throughput of just over a gigabit. I haven't had any problems at all with it, and that's helping. So the 680M is decoding this just fine. What about then some other files? So HEVC, this is a 10-bit file. Okay, that loads in just fine, and I can clearly see that that is running. Yes, that 30 frames per second, not dropping any frames. Close that off, and I'll try now 4K 60. At the start here, that's running in slow motion. So that's normal, the way it looks. Just skip ahead. Okay, and I can see that again. That is running perfectly at 4K 60, which is what I'm recording this clip in. So great streaming performance, media files, anything you throw at this mini PC, it will handle it with ease. This Ryzen 7 6800H. Now 4K video editing, this is with Adobe Premiere Pro. It is the latest version, latest update, and the timeline is quick. Now I did want to point out that this, while the graphics, integrated graphics is a lot better now with the 680M, and it does have the higher clock rate, 2.2 gigahertz, 12 cores, it still won't beat a dedicated GPU. Something like even an RTX 3050 Ti or 3060 would be a little bit better with the playback performance, but it is a huge step up from the Vega graphics we had previously with the 5000 series. You can see as I move ahead with the timeline, it isn't dropping any frames, and I've only got quarter playback resolution, which is what I recommend for 4K files, which I am editing right now. So it's pretty good for basic edits, and that is an old review of mine that's about 10 minutes long. It's my little demo file here. But I'll find out what the export times are now for 1 minute of footage at the YouTube preset. Here we go with my timer. There's always going to be about a second, maybe almost 2 seconds difference, but this should be quick. All right, it is steaming ahead, ripping through this, encoding at a really quick rate, and the RAM speed will definitely be helping, along with, of course, that new 680M. So it looks like it's going to finish up. I'll skip ahead now, and I would say maybe even under 40 seconds. So here we go, just finished, about, you could say 34 seconds. That's really good. An impressive speed for 1 minute of 4K footage encoded at the YouTube 4K preset here with Adobe Premiere Pro. And onto the fun part here. So the base test that I always do, GTA 5, yes, it is an old game, but it's a good game. And look at the frame rate. So around 100 frames per second. This is a good, about, just off the top of my head, around 25-30% faster than the previous gen, which I would get around 70 frames per second with the top Vega graphics. So it's looking very good, even inside the car here, having to render the interior of the car, and it's able to pull 90 frames per second. Now take a look at the GPU, the throttling that's taking place, because it's not holding the top clocks, nowhere near it. It's not 2.2 gigahertz. Now I saw this on the last mini PC that I reviewed with the Ryzen 6000 series. It was the 6900HX. Same thing was happening. It wasn't hitting the top turbos or holding them the whole time. So I'm seeing the highest it's getting up to, wow, even dipping down to 533 megahertz. I'm not too sure why it is doing this. You can see it's not even going over 2000. So if it was clocked at the highest all the time, And I've double checked this. I've checked my power profile, all of that stuff. There's no reason for this to happen, but the performance is still very good. Still getting 80 frames per second at 1080p GTA 5 with normal settings, and the pedestrian density, the traffic, view distance, and everything is set to the middle. So great gaming performance for integrated graphics. Cyberpunk, should I say cyber glitch? Look at that. It's still glitching out. It just hasn't loaded in the textures for these cars. Oh, this game is such a joke how buggy it still is after like about 20,000 patches or whatever it's had. What a joke. Anyway, 1080p, look at this performance. 30 frames per second on integrated graphics. With the low setting preset, of course. But it's looking pretty good. And now, okay, those cars seem to have corrected themselves. The models aren't glitching out anymore. Although that car just randomly appeared out of nowhere. What I'll do now is set it to 720p, which will improve the performance, and we'll see how the 680M graphics performs then. Okay, now this is looking a lot better. I just saw it before at 60 frames per second for integrated graphics. That's impressive. But we're still getting, look, a turbo that's up to about 1900 maximum, but it's still not pulling and hitting the 2200, that turbo. It's throttling. So the graphics clearly throttling, and I saw it throttling on the last 6000 series, so I don't know whether it's just something to do with the way the 6000 series is, or perhaps it's to do with thermals, power limits. Probably the power limits. I'd say because of the 45 watt power limit, that is definitely what I feel is restricting this performance a little. So it could do even better than the, what are we looking at, about 50 frames per second right now, but look at all these NPCs, the cars and everything. This is certainly better than what you would get on a PlayStation 4 Pro, so last gen console. For such a demanding game like this, it is impressive that this is integrated graphics.
All up, this is an excellent little mini PC. Great performance, good thermals, USB 4. It can run 2 displays out, well, 3 in total using that Type-C port. You can add another 2.5-inch drive. It's got 32 gigabytes of fast DDR5 RAM. The PCIe speeds, PCIe 4.0 out of that SSD are like PCIe 3.0, so it's not the fastest. You could upgrade that if you weren't happy with the speeds. We get Wi-Fi 6, not Wi-Fi 6E. And I really wish those HDMI ports were HDMI 2.0s, but we do get the gigabit LAN on here. Sorry, 2.5-bit gigabit LAN, so very fast. So there's a lot of good things going with this mini PC. The only real disappointing area for me is that the 680M graphics is throttling a lot due to power limit constraints there. So it could clock up a lot higher to 2.2 gigahertz, but it seems to always run and bounce around 1500, 1600, sometimes 1800 megahertz, which is quite a bit lower, so it could perform even better, even though, as you saw, it can play Cyberpunk 2077, and it can play GTA 5 and a lot of other games at very good frame rates. We're still not actually seeing the potential of this APU because it's limited to 45 watts, which we cannot change. And honestly, the cooling wouldn't be able to handle it. It already hits 90 degrees C, but no thermal throttling. So thank you so much for watching my review here of the Beelink SER6 Pro.